David, remember David brought this up to the Lord. He saw this and he wanted to be rescued from it. In Psalms 57:6, they have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, into the midst whereof they are all fallen themselves. He saw God can make the evil ones fall into their own net. They've laid it for you. They would do you harm. But see, the fact is that God can cause them to fall into their own gin. What an amazing thing. Well, God has a net. What an amazing thing that, for him to say this in this manner to the disciples. See, he's saying something, in other words. God has a net. Job knew of God's net. Remember in Job 19:6, it says, know now that God hath overthrown me and hath compassed me about with his net. There's another word, Job saying, there's no way I can get out of this. I know it. God's done this, and there's no way that I'm going to get an ounce of relief until he gives it to me. David spoke of his net. Psalm 66:10, he says, fear thou, O God, hast proved us and hast tried us as silver is tried. Thou brought us into the net. See this? God can bring you to a place where you can know that he's the only one that can help you. See, you can't get out of the circumstance or the situation. Well, the kingdom of God is likened to a net. This is what it's like. Now, the use of the word here in this text is clearly talking about a fishing net. I don't want to confuse the discussion of nets, but this is clearly talking about a fishing net, and the use of it, the way that it's used, is clearly demonstrated here. Obviously, he wants to catch a large volume of fish. The focus here, Jesus is talking about, the emphasis is on the good fish. This really is what it is. The bad fish that came up with it, that's not the main point. But there were some that were bad. But that wasn't the main point. If a person was just seeking a single meal, like I've already said, he would use a line and pole. A net required more than one person, is my point. You got to have more people. One person can't do this kind of a net. Jesus is revealing the hidden nature that is driving his kingdom. This is the kingdom of heaven we're talking about. In other words, you can't see it with your eyes, so he gives us this picture. It's like protection for some. The net is actually like a protection, and it's like a snare for others. You can't get out, and others wouldn't want to get out if they could. They don't want to get out. It's like a means of capture for some and relief for others. You like to think about eternal security? I like to think about eternal security. I do. It's in the hands of the Lord. But there's some people that don't want to talk about eternity. Security don't want to talk about eternity at all. Just as fishermen have special equipment for catching large volumes of fish, God does too. God has a net. He does have it. The Lord's net is the gospel. Now, consider this for a moment. The very thing that he preaches, you preach the gospel. It says, he that believes shall be saved, and he that believeth not shall be damned. Okay, now, Peter gives a word of warning to some people. He says, they've forgotten that they were purged from their old sins. Okay, now, what had to happen in order for them to forget that they were purged? They really were purged from their old sins. They really were in the net. They believed the gospel. They came in. They were captured by the net. They believed the record that God gave of his son. What happened, Peter? They forgot that they were purged from their old sins. See, this is what he's talking about when he says bad fish. They had to take them out. What happened? They forgot. They went back. They were like a dog that turned again into their vomit. Why? Well, he's telling us exactly what happened. How did they get in this net? The gospel brought them in. They were brought in. It was like a net. See, the kingdom of God was likened to a net, and they gathered together of all kinds into this net. The net that God uses is the proclamation of what he's done in his son for you. Now, you believe the record that God gave of his son, you come on board, You get a new nature. You give a clean conscience. You start running the race with endurance. But see, if at any point in time that's frustrated and you stop believing, well, what happens? You can't get out of the net, that's for sure. See, in the sense, once you're in the net, you're always in the net. If God catches you in his net, there's no getting away. Now, I know I'm talking to the brethren. You don't want to get away. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. For some, it's like a protection. You believe the record that God gave of his son. I think of the confidence that that instills in you. It's the belief of this gospel message that is the means that God has chosen to gather together in one all them that believe. Now, God has a very effective net, doesn't he? Very effective. See, this net's never going to break. Remember one time they caught so many fishes when they were pulling up their net, it was breaking, and so they called their partners over, help us. His net's not going to break. It's going to gather together exactly what he wants to, pull them up, gathered of every kind. Now see, the purpose of the net was gathered together of every kind. So it shouldn't surprise us that every kind is in the net. Every kind is there. You say, well, why are the tares here? He gathered of every kind. He did. He gathered them all. The net here is described as serving a purpose. God has a purpose for the net. It's not just, well, just talk to it. Let's just say it's like this, because we got to say it's like something. The kingdom of heaven is like it to a net. Every kind of fish. Now you can imagine the Apostle Peter, he's a fisherman. This is his kind of hometown talk here. He knows exactly what Jesus is talking about. When Jesus called him into his service, this is what he was doing. He was cleaning his nets. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. Here he's considering this. He's going to make me fishers of men. This is why Jesus is going to do this. Well, there's coming a time when the net's going to be full. It's not full yet because he hasn't gathered it in yet. But when it's full, then he's going to gather it into the shore. It's only a matter of when, not if. It's like if, maybe, no, God's going to gather this net into the shore when it's full. He's going to do it. And he's already said, he already knows when it's going to be full. It should be noted that the people he's talking about in this parable are all, we might say, good church-going people, or just church-going people. This is the classification of people that he's talking about here. People that have responded in some way to the gospel favorably. These are the ones that from our perspective, they have apparently believed the gospel and they are in the net. These are the ones that he's talking about. He's not talking about the atheists that have never confessed Christ. See, they're not in the net, not in this net. He's going to gather this net in. Not everyone that says, Lord, Lord. That's right. See, this is what he's talking about. Not everyone that's made a profession is real. He said, remember, Paul said there's got to be heresies among you to prove. What is he talking about? So in the net. This person's in the net. Well, there comes a time when it has to be made known. Which ones believe the record that God gave of his son, and which ones just said they believe the record that God gave of his son. The main point of salvation is not just to fill the net. That's not the main point of salvation. See, the main point of salvation was to conform them into the image of his son. So he pulls the net up, and he's going to confirm which ones were transformed into the image of his son and which ones were not. When it was full, they drew it to shore. Then they sat down. Now, this sounds like a time of relaxation, doesn't it? They sat down. They sat down because the work was over. See? The salvation, there's going to come a time when the door is shut. No more is going to come in. At this time when he's gathered it into the shore and he sits down, no more salvational work is going to be done. No one's going to be changed after that. That's right. There's coming a time when grace to enter in is going to be stopped up. It's going to be shut off. Coming a day when the Lord shall, as it were, sit down at the judgment. It's time now to determine what happened. This judgment is going to be a very blessed time for some and a very not so blessed time for others. See, but why is Jesus saying this? Because if a person will